Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play the entirety of this video, and then I'll go back and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on, and talk about things that I think that were done right and or done wrong. Without further ado, here we go.
This following critical incident briefing is intended to provide you with information about a recent incident which resulted in a deputy-involved shooting. This briefing has been prepared so that you may have a better understanding of the circumstances which led to the use of force. As a part of this briefing, you may be shown photographs of the scene and the evidence involved, both surveillance video and body-worn camera video, and additional information relevant to the event. We hope this provides you with a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know as of this moment. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department conducts very thorough use of force investigations. Every deputy-involved shooting is a traumatic event for all involved. Each deputy-involved shooting is reviewed by independent investigative agencies to ensure compliance with the law and Sheriff's Department policy. Even as the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department conducts its own investigation, investigators and attorneys with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office conduct their own independent review when someone is struck by gunfire. These investigations typically require multiple witness interviews, review of video footage, and analysis of significant amounts of forensic evidence. We are in the very early stages of this investigation. Our understanding of the incident may change as additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We do not draw conclusions about whether the involved department members acted consistent with the law, our policies, and our training until all the facts are known and the entire investigation is complete. A word of caution, the images and information you are about to see may be disturbing. When a law enforcement officer uses force to effect an arrest of a suspect or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. Viewer discretion is advised. On Friday, April 23, 2021, deputies assigned to Century Station responded to 4 separate calls for service regarding a male who had overdosed or a male who was suicidal. The male was identified as 25-year-old Miguel de los Santos. In response to the first call for service at 3:54 a.m., deputies and Los Angeles County Fire Department paramedics located de los Santos at his residence in the 1200 block of East 67th Street. De los Santos was transported to a local hospital by ambulance regarding a possible drug overdose. He was treated in the emergency room and was released later in the day. In response to the second call for service at 5:10 p.m., deputies and Los Angeles County Fire Department paramedics again responded to de los Santos' residence after his girlfriend reported de los Santos wanted to kill himself. De los Santos agreed to be transported to a local hospital for a, quote, self-admission mental health evaluation. De los Santos was transported by ambulance prior to the arrival of deputies. While being transported to the hospital, de los Santos fought with the ambulance personnel and attempted to stab them with a pair of scissors before he fled on foot. This generated a third call for service at 5:50 p.m. near 77th Street and Central Avenue. When deputies arrived, neither the ambulance nor de los Santos were at the location. De los Santos returned to his residence after fleeing from the ambulance. This generated the fourth call for service to his residence at 6:10 p.m. when his girlfriend reported de los Santos was armed with a knife and suicidal. Deputies and paramedics arrived at the residence within minutes and requested the Sheriff's Department mental evaluation team to respond. De los Santos was seen standing inside the house armed with 2 kitchen knives. While the deputies and paramedics were talking with de los Santos, he would alternate between holding 1 or 2 kitchen knives and holding a metal trash can as a shield. Deputies and paramedics spoke to de los Santos through the open front door. They attempted to get him to put the knives down and agree to be transported to a local hospital. The mental evaluation team, consisting of 2 psychiatric clinicians and a deputy, arrived on scene and negotiated with De Los Santos to surrender for more than 2 hours. De Los Santos continuously brandished 1 or 2 knives while holding a metal trash can and would feign to charge at the mental evaluation team and deputies in an apparent attempt to cause the deputies to shoot him.
Miguel, put the knife inside the trash can. Everything was going well. You were doing excellent. You're a brave man. I know you're tough. You want the right thing done. Okay? Come on, just let it go. Just let it go in there. Just drop it. Drop that knife. No one's gonna hurt you.
That's it, alright?
Listen, put it in that trash can. Just drop it, Miguel.
Stop, Miguel. Put it down. Hey,
Don't do that.
don't do it.
You're trying to kill me. Who is? Who's trying to kill you? Miguel. Who's trying to kill you?
The paramedics, the firefighters.
No, they're not gonna kill you.
Stop doing that.
Don't do that.
Ultimately, De Los Santos exited the rear door of his residence and entered the front yard. He advanced toward the deputies while holding the knives and using the metal trash can as a shield. A deputy fired a 40-millimeter Arwin rubber projectile, striking the trash can De Los Santos was holding. 2 deputies discharged their tasers, one of which struck De Los Santos but only had a minimal effect. De Los Santos continued to advance toward the deputies, slashing toward them with both knives, and a deputy-involved shooting occurred.
Here, hold here. Yeah.
Hey, this way.
Stand by.
Hey,
40 millimeters. Give me a 40
Marty, over here. Let's go. Shield, over here.
Hey, get down.
Let's go. Come on.
Get down. Get down.
Move up. Shield, move up.
Down.
Hey, he's moving. Right here. Hey. Hey, drop it. Hey. Drop it. Hey, stop. That's it. Drop the knife.
After being struck by gunfire several times, De Los Santos fell to the ground. Los Angeles County Fire Department paramedics at the scene immediately provided medical aid to De Los Santos. He was transported by ambulance to a local hospital where he received medical treatment and survived his injuries. There were no other persons injured during the incident. 2 kitchen knives were recovered from the scene. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department has begun a thorough and in-depth investigation. Homicide investigators will continue to investigate this incident by completing additional interviews, examining additional evidence and toxicology results, and completing forensic reviews of the involved evidence. When completed, the facts of the investigation will be presented to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office Justice System Integrity Division for review and a determination whether the force used was within the law. Following the District Attorney's review, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Internal Affairs Bureau will complete an administrative investigation of the incident. The Internal Affairs Bureau will present the case to the Executive Force Review Committee, which will evaluate the performance of the deputies and determine if their tactics and use of deadly force were within policy and met the high standards of the Sheriff's Department. On behalf of Sheriff Alex Villanueva, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is appreciative of your interest and understanding in this incident.
Okay, let's get into it. So as a recap, there's multiple calls of service dealing with this guy. So the first time they come, they pick him up and they take him to the hospital. Then he gets released. He goes back home. The second time, they go out there, he gets picked up in the ambulance, and then a little ways down the road, an issue starts. He starts fighting them and escapes, and then he runs back home, and that's where the officer-involved shooting ends up happening, is once he gets back to his house. Well, not once he gets back, but eventually. So, the second time, the call comes. They come pick him up from his house, and they get him in the ambulance. And the ambulance makes it down a decent way. And he's not that far from home. The ambulance makes it a decent way, and then something happens. He starts fighting. So when they start this clip, obviously the ambulance has already stopped, and the driver of it has gotten into the back here. How long he had been fighting to begin with, no idea. What they stopped for, no idea. The circumstances that's going on here, I'm not 100% sure. So he was suicidal on the second call. The first call, it was either an overdose or it was, suicidal ideation, whatever. I don't think they pursued the suicidal ideations because obviously when he got released, he went right back home. The first incident, it would be nice to see body camera footage from it to kind of see how that played out. But we don't know how that played out. Second time around, it is for sure suicidal ideation. Deputies and fire EMS respond. And then he's en route to the hospital. So, at this point, I am unsure of what is being played out here. I don't know if the police sort of influenced him in going to the hospital to be checked out instead of them officially taking custody of him, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes the police don't want to deal with someone, and they'll tell them, get on the ambulance, go to the hospital, and get checked out, and then you're good. If not, you want to cause a problem, we're going to take you. And that happens quite a bit. So there's the possibility that could be what's going on here. The police could have told him that he's either going to go with the ambulance to the hospital or they're going to arrest him. But I don't know if that's what went on or not because they don't provide any information like that. The second possibility is this guy is being detained for a mental health evaluation or a 72-hour emergency medical detention. Or it don't have to be 72 hour. I don't know California law, but it could be that he's under some type of emergency medical detention. And if he is, then I have some issues on why he's A, not restrained, and then B, why there's not a law enforcement officer there. And it could be, if this is, like I said, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the police told him to go with them or told him to go with the ambulance or he could be arrested, or if it's an emergency detention for his suicidal ideation. But if it is, and I don't know California laws, it could be that he is technically detained in a legal sense. He's not free to go where he wants to, and the ambulance is just facilitating the transportation. I know here in Kentucky, when a person is taken into custody for a mental emergency medical detention, they'll go to life skills, and life skills will certify them. They'll ask them a bunch of questions, they'll do an assessment on them, and then they will determine whether that person needs to go to a psychiatric hospital. And in our area, that's called Western State. So if in our county, if it doesn't matter which agency detains a person for this, they'll take them to life skills, and then they get checked out by life skills company, and then the determination on them going to Western State is made. once that determination is made, then by law, that transportation is to be facilitated by the sheriff's office. So if our state police, our campus police, or one of our 3 different cities within our county, if one of those 3 different city agencies perform the arrest, then they have no obligation to take a person to that Western State Hospital, which is, it's a pretty good little drive away from this county. And that responsibility is to fall to the sheriff by law. So if state police arrest or detain someone for mental health, takes them to life skills, and they get certified, the sheriff has to come get that person and transport them. Now, obviously each state's laws are going to be different, but I can tell you that in Kentucky the laws are interesting for that, because although it does specify that the sheriff is to be responsible for that, it also talks in there about EMTs, an ambulance providing transportation, and it even talks about a transportation company providing the transportation. So our state law does allow for an ambulance to take a person. It just doesn't happen in our area. It may happen in other parts of the state, I'm just unaware, but in our area it doesn't happen. But it does allow for an ambulance to take a person. So this could be what's going on. He has been officially detained or arrested, but instead of the sheriff's office facilitating the actual transportation, the ambulance is. Now, the interesting part about that, if that's what's going on, is he's obviously not restrained in any way. He's not cuffed to the bed. So that presents a problem for the EMTs. They're not trained in combatives, nor are they equipped for combatives. They're not trained in restraining people, striking, anything like that. Nor do they have the training and the tools, such as pepper spray, taser, firearm, baton, etc. So if this guy starts fighting and resisting, well, then they have no way to effectively deal with this guy. It's just brute force. And that's it. That's all, the only option they have. So even as they're wrestling with this guy and they do gain control over him, well, what the hell are they doing? They're not going to be able to do anything else. They most likely do not have handcuffs. They're just going to have to hold the guy until police arrive. And if you've never wrestled with someone and tried to gain control over them when they did not want you to have any control over them whatsoever, you have no idea how difficult it is. If you've never wrestled someone into a pair of handcuffs, you just have no idea how difficult it can be. So I don't like the fact that if that's what's going on, these EMTs are supposed to be facilitating this transport. I don't like how they're essentially defenseless. What would have been a better option in this case? For one, the deputies could have cuffed him to the stretcher. That works. I like that option. I've cuffed people to the stretchers and hospital beds before. It works. You just slap the cuffs on, and I mean, that bed's not coming apart. It's pretty damn sturdy. He could have been restrained to the bed, or a deputy could have been in the back of this ambulance with them, or the deputy could have been following them and then been able to quickly assist if they had to pull over for whatever reason, or if this guy jumped out. But I certainly don't believe they should have been left alone with him if this is an actual detention kind of thing going on. And I think that it is an actual detention thing going on, and that they're trying to make this good faith effort to keep him detained, because otherwise they would be putting themselves at a lot of risk. When you look at consent and implied consent laws, whatever, if a person does not want to be treated, then that's it. I mean, if they are gushing blood out of their neck and they say, I don't want you to touch me, don't put that Band-Aid on me, you have to comply to their wishes. Even though you know they're standing there or sitting there dying, they're bleeding to death. If they're looking at you saying, don't touch me, I don't want any treatment, then you have to go with that. And if this was a case of the officers telling this dude, you either go with the ambulance or you're being arrested, then this would be just a straight up medical transport. No need for them to have any obligation to detain this guy. And if it's just a regular medical transport and there's no detention for this guy, if these medics go to restrain him and he's saying he don't want treatment, well, that's either unlawful imprisonment or kidnapping. And so I don't see these medics putting their livelihood at risk like that. Like, why would you put yourself at risk to do all this on someone that is like this? So that's what makes me think that this guy is officially detained. And if he's being officially detained, then he needs to be actually detained. He needs to be restrained, and either restrained to the bed or a deputy in the back able to quickly restrain him. There could be a law in California for their mental health stuff that handcuffs not to be used unless it's something going on. And that could be it. That could be that, nothing serious enough was going on to warrant putting handcuffs on him, because doing so, could hurt his feelings and violate his rights. But he escapes out of the ambulance and goes back home. Now, of course, this is obviously an aftermath photo. We see the shield. I've got this. I'm starting to dislike shields a lot more. I'm just not seeing them as useful pieces of equipment. Go back. Okay, so they have a mental evaluation team that has 2 psychiatric clinicians and a deputy. I don't know much about this team or how it's set up, so I don't know if it's just a regular deputy that was assigned to go with these 2 clinicians, and if it's always a different deputy, just a different road deputy, whoever's free at the time gets assigned to them, or if it's like an actual dedicated deputy who's trained to assist them and has more focused de-escalation training, etc. I don't know. If they're going to have a mental team with 2 psychiatric clinicians, then in my opinion there should be a dedicated deputy for that team, or at least a series of different deputies spread across the shifts who have specialized training to be able to go on these calls. And so that would obviously require, more than one deputy to be trained in all this extra stuff. But I mean, obviously, if you're a large enough agency, you're going to be able to somewhat afford it. But what that would allow would be, in my head, the way I think it should be set up is you got your two clinicians there, and then the deputy who's going to be assigned to that team doesn't necessarily always have to be 100% just assigned to that, and that's all they do. They could also augment patrol and go on stuff. But the person who's trained to assist them can be trained in some more de-escalation techniques, etc. But also be trained and equipped with more less lethal options and a dedicated vehicle or assortment of equipment to go with that vehicle would be good for this team. Something that includes multiple impact munitions or less lethal tools, like the 12 gauge beanbag, the 40 millimeter launcher, pepper ball gun. It could also include extra taser accessories, like the 35-foot cartridges to be able to get better standoff and whatnot. It can even have more specialized things in there, like the MK9 pepper spray, the big, I forget the designation for it, but the big fire extinguisher sized OC delivery system. It could have pepper ball gun in there, the Bola wrap gun, a net shooting system. So there could be a whole assortment of different less lethal things that go into this vehicle that would be assigned for the mental evaluation team. That way, when talks fail, then this vehicle has all this assortment of stuff, and as other deputies get there to assist, all this other different stuff can be, staged and potentially put into play depending on the situation and what's going on. Now, would that work for every single situation? No. There could be some situations where it very rapidly evolves and they don't have time to get this stuff out. Like, as soon as they get there, boom, person comes charging at them with a knife. Well, you don't have time to get stuff out. In situations like this, where it ends up being sort of a standoff, then it would be nice as more people arrive, more of these tools get put out into play. Excuse me. So this officer has the 40 millimeter launcher. The single shot tube, in my opinion, it's kind of useless. Yeah, it's nice to be able to launch a 40 millimeter foam projectile at a person and inflict some pain on them and try and get compliance out of them. But if you miss that one shot, or that one shot's ineffective, will that reload? it's not fast. You gotta pop the breech open and put another one in and lock that breech back in place and bring it back up. I mean, it's a slow process. The multi-shot launchers, I think, are more suitable and or they're more effective. When you have 6-shot capability that you can just shoot it like essentially an oversized revolver, well, that works. That's a great tool to have. You can do 3 shots of 40 millimeter impact munitions really fast versus fire, thunk, pop it open, old cartridge out, new cartridge in, lock it in place, bring it back up, aim, fire, versus thump, thump, thump. Which one's better? I like the thump, thump, thump a lot better. Back in the day, there was a pump action 40 millimeter grenade launcher that was used back in the Vietnam era. Something like that, I think, would be really awesome to have come back into play. Having a dedicated pump action 40 millimeter less lethal launcher. Like, that would be badass. The original pump action grenade launcher, it only held like 4 or 5 rounds or something like that. But hey, having 4 rounds is better than 1 round. So I don't know. If there's any less lethal manufacturing companies watching, then let's see a 40 millimeter pump action come back to existence. That would be pretty badass. But anyway, the multi-shot, the little oversized revolver system, that's way better than these breech loaded ones. So they just take too long. They're kind of in a situation where he's inside, and it's like the lion's den. You know, there's a reason why the circus performers take the lion out of their own little cage and bring him into the arena versus the performer going into the lion's cage. It's a whole nother dynamic, right? When you take people out of their den, it changes the dynamics. It changes how confident in everything they are. This guy has the advantage of being in his den and knowing his space. These guys don't know the space that well. It would be better if they could draw him outside, because if they end up having to go inside on him, they're in an enclosed space, and it's harder to deal with that in such an enclosed space and small area with a bunch of stuff to be knocking into. There's not a whole lot of space for them to be working right here. Get them out of the yard, it's a lot easier. He eventually changes the scene for them by going out on his own, trying to go out the back. But if they would have had to have dealt with him in here right now, going through this door, it would suck. It's not going to be as nice as having outside and being in the yard and having a large space to work with here. As I said, the single launch tuber here, the single tube launcher here, not the best thing. If they would have had a multi-shot, I think it would have been great to be able to use on him right now. Just pump them multiple times with it, trying to gain compliance out of them. OC is another tool that I think is not utilized as much as it is anymore. For example, the paperball gun. And it seems like the paperball gun has kind of I won't say disappeared, but like, you don't see it in use as much. And I think that's kind of sad, because I do think the paperball gun is a really good tool. In this scenario, you know, if he brought this can up or whatever and was shielding himself against it like he was, bring it to another screenshot there, you know, that paperball gun, aim it at that can and just let it rip, you know, ding 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 ding, and one, the pepper balls are going to burst and all that OC powder is going to go everywhere. But two, like, that sudden ding 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 could scare him in the dropping it, and then of course you're going to get your direct hit into his stomach and chest area with the pepper balls, and get the effect of OC contamination plus impact, and that could get you the desired result. Of course, they could also fire the pepper ball into the ceiling and have it rain down on him. I don't know what the construction of the ceiling is. There's a possibility that some of the rounds might punch all the way through and go into the attic. But certainly they could have, you know, deployed it against him, and hit him in the can right here, and then go down and work his legs some too. Release the capsaicin in there, and gain compliance out of him that way, or just aim the MK9 at him and just hose him down. Just paint him a different color. That would have gotten, I think, the desired effect. The downside, and this could be why people use it less, partly why they use it less. I think it's a twofold kind of thing. One, whenever you use AC, you end up wearing some of it. You start breathing some of it in. You get teary-eyed as well. So there's that aspect. And then taser. Ever since taser came out, OC kind of took the back burner, so to speak, and just hasn't been utilized as much. And those are the two reasons I think they're not utilized as much. I like OC. I think it's a great tool. I have sprayed lots and lots of people, and I've always got the desired result. Like, it fucks people up. It does a really good job of taking the fight out of people. Everyone I've sprayed, they really changed their mind and decided that fucking with me or someone else was no longer of interest to them, because one, they were temporarily blinded with fiery pain, and they've got this sensation of being unable to breathe. Their face feels like it's on fire. They got snot and mucus coming out of their nose. It's just a bad day for them, and it really changes people's minds. If they're really pissed off at you and they're wanting to come at you and cause harm to you, and you paint their face, it changes them. They are no longer interested in messing with you. But the downside to using OC is you can breathe a little bit of it in yourself and start coughing. Some of it can, some of the particulate matter can float back towards you and get in your eyes, and you start getting all teary-eyed and feeling the burn in your eyes. You spray it, and you get it on your fingers. You may not really feel it on your fingers, but if you rub your face, rub your eyes, you feel it. If you forget to decon your hands and you go to piss, then you're going to feel it on your dick. It sucks. I've done that before. It's great. It's a great tool. It really takes the fight out of people. But the thing that sucks about it is you inevitably end up getting some of it on you in some way. But it's a good fight stopper. Now, there are some people that it doesn't work on. Fortunately, I've not come across anybody that it just didn't really work on. Everyone that I've sprayed it, like I said, I got the desired effect out of it. It really coined or puts in the shine for the term of fuck around, find out. I can tell you that. So OC, I think, would have been a really good tool to be able to use at this point. De-escalation. So I probably should have talked about this one first before going into using force and everything. The big buzzword: de-escalate, de-escalate, de-escalate. And when they first get here, that is their goal, to de-escalate. Talk to him. And that's what they're doing. They're talking to him, trying to de-escalate this guy, get him to surrender peacefully. And they talk to him. They talk to him in the coddling manner, oh, you're doing really good, blah, blah, blah. Like being soft-spoken with him and everything. That can work on some people. Some people it just don't work on. And so it comes to a point where de-escalation actually causes things to escalate. Sometimes talking doesn't solve anything. Sometimes getting physical has to solve it. There are times when you let it go on for too long with your de-escalation, it actually causes the situation to escalate. And this right here is what I find as an example of too much de-escalation has led to escalation. Because they refused to use any kind of force on this guy was able to, in my opinion, get a little bit more mentally tougher on his decision on what he wanted to happen. He wanted to be shot by them. He wanted to die. And obviously, this is a suicide by police kind of thing. He makes these little fake charges at him, trying to make him think he's going to come at him to get him to shoot him. The longer this went on, minute by minute, every minute that went by that no force was used, no physical force, because talking is, can be a force. But every minute that goes by, the longer this goes on, that no physical force being used, this guy is toughening himself up mentally. If he was fully committed, if he was fully mentally tough on his resolve of running at them and forcing them to shoot him, he would have done it right here. He would have done it, charging out this door of this living room at them and forced them to shoot and kill him. But he didn't. Why? Because he wasn't mentally tough enough yet. He had not built up that courage to be able to go do it. The quote-unquote fail-safe part of his brain that deals with self-preservation was still mostly in charge at this point. It was like, hey dude, don't do this shit. Like, bad idea. The longer this went on, the more they talked to him, the more that little self-preservation part of the brain was being silenced. And the courage he was building up was becoming more, quote-unquote, dominant. There comes a point where talking is obviously ineffective, and there's just no more talking to be had. It just needs to get physical. And the sooner that people recognize that, I think the sooner that a lot of these situations will drastically change. But everyone's all hell-bent on this idea that de-escalation is just all talk. It's just talking people down. Like, like they're going to be fucking Kevin Spacey off of hostage negotiations. Or Negotiator, that movie. Or Samuel L. Jackson. Like, it's not all talking. Sometimes it has to involve physical force. The physical force will prevent the situation from getting to a deadly point. Action versus reaction. So this guy, he gets mentally tougher, goes out the back door, works up the courage to come around that corner and start charging him. That's his actions. He's now forcing the officers to have to react. It's not good to be on the reacting end. It's better to be on the acting end. When you can force action on someone and force them to have to react to you, you're the one who's at advantage. So in this instance right here, if they would have came to a certain agreement amongst themselves, hey, we're going to give this guy 15 minutes, or hey, we're going to have a code word that once it gets to a point where we don't think we're going to be able to do anything else, we're going to say this code word and we're going to go on the attack. We're going to go on the offensive. We're going to go in. We're going to get them. By doing so, if they would have been able to initiate contact on him, he would have been not expecting it. In this instance where he's not charging at him. I'm not saying like just wait until he does something. No, I mean like when he's not doing something, boom, hit him. Because he's not going to be expecting that shit. And when you can hit someone with the surprise element and you are overwhelming with your force, it causes people to be stunned. And they're stunned, and then they have to start going through their OODA loop process, and they're having to respond to you initiating action on them, and they're having to react. That can be a better thing to have, because you can gain control over someone a lot easier. You can overwhelm them and put them into flight or freeze kind of mode versus fight mode. Otherwise, if not, then they eventually turn it to fight mode. And that's what happened. This guy, he finally decided what he was going to do. He was determined, and he charged at him. He went into fight mode. Now, obviously, he's not actively fighting them or anything, but that was what going on, mentally, I guess, so to speak, or psychologically. He was in the fight mode process. He was going at them, not fleeing from them or freezing in place, but going at them. If they would have turned the tables on him and went after him first, I think and did it right, not just half-ass it and go in there and hit him with something and then kind of go in there and stand around him. If they would have just hit him with something and just swarmed in at him and overwhelmed him with force by surprise, then I think that would have triggered the flight or freeze response into him, and they would have been able to overwhelm him and take him into custody without having to use deadly physical force against him. But yeah, too much talking, in my opinion, can lead to problems. All it does is give people more time to get mentally tougher in their resolve and what they want to do. At some point, you have to say, talking's ineffective. It's just not going to be working anymore. And then you initiate action. Anytime you can initiate action, it's generally going to go better for you, because you can overwhelm that person with the force and with the surprise. Now, whenever it comes to the videos being split like this, I'm not the biggest fan of that. It's just a lot to try and pay attention to, because sometimes I'll find myself looking back and forth really quick on what's going on, and that doesn't help any. So I just pick one screen, one view to watch. I'll watch it through its entirety, and then I'll go back and watch the other. Now, that first one I pick, I usually end up having to hit rewind a few times and see all the moving pieces and all that, and then play another one and do the same with it, and then get a better idea of the layout. So we'll start with the right screen here. We'll start with this one. So this officer has the single tube launcher, and he is at that front door area.
Hey, this way. Stand by. Hey.
The shields, as I noted earlier, I'm kind of not the biggest fan of shields. I don't think that they're being implemented the way they should be used. And later on, when I get to the left screen over here, or actually I'll try to remember it while I'm still on this one, but it clicked in my head when I went to this one earlier on my first take. But The shields, like I said, I don't think they're being utilized the way they need to be utilized, especially like in the videos where you see gunplay being involved. You'll see one dude with a shield, and then no one else is behind him. Like everyone's all to the left or to the right of him. Like, what the hell is the shield for? So essentially, you, in those kind of scenarios, you only have one person behind a shield. Everyone else is unshielded. They're all like to his left and to his right. And so when it comes to videos like that, I'm just like, what the hell? Like, why do you even have the shield out at this point? Like, there's only one dude protected by this. Everyone else is to the far left and right of this guy. And in this scenario, same kind of thing. Like, he's standing there with a shield, but no one else is behind him. Like, who the hell is he protecting? The air behind him? The wall? So, and then the kind of shield he's got. So he has a ballistic shield. You know, it's rated to stop bullets. It's kind of overkill for the knife. It'd be nice to be able to hold it up and protect against a stabbing motion or whatever. But it's kind of limited. I don't think it's useful in this scenario. I think it would have been more useful to have that deputy holding the shield equipped with a different, less lethal weapon.
Let's go, come on. 40 millimeters, give me a 40 over here, let's go, shield.
So they're yelling for the 40 millimeter to come around.
Shield, over here. Hey, get down.
And then the guy you hear is yelling for a shield.
Let's go, come on. Get down. Get down. Move up.
Pause it at this point. So if you look to the left screen real quick, there's this officer here. Go back to the right screen. The officer with the 40 millimeter launcher is there, and then off to his right, I believe it is the officer with the taser. So where the hell is the guy with the shield going to go? Who's he going to protect? I don't know. I don't know what the idea for the shield is, but it's kind of a pointless thing, in my opinion. I think the person with the shield should have just had a different, less lethal weapon.
Hey, he's moving.
The guy with the 40 millimeter launcher is making the approach, and he has lethal cover. Of course, this guy on the left screen has his gun, and then there's another person with their gun out off screen that you can't see. Anytime less lethal tools are being utilized, there needs to be lethal cover for them. And I think for the most part, that's pretty well understood. I cannot recall right now any of the videos that I've done where that was an issue. And I sometimes talk about it for the viewers who don't know anything about tactics or anything. But anytime a less lethal tool is being considered, there has to be lethal cover involved, because less lethal options can and do fail. And as evident in this video, the less lethal options they went with failed. And so for the viewers who are watching who don't know about tactics, what if there was just one officer here by themselves and this guy was suicidal and then came towards the officer? If they had their taser out and deployed it and it was ineffective and the guy continued to come, he would be able to clear the distance a lot faster than what you think, and would be able to be on top of the officer, stabbing and slashing and causing either serious physical injury and or death before the officer would ever be able to get their firearm out and deliver accurate incapacitating rounds. So that's why in scenarios like that, where there's just one officer and there's a suicidal person and they start charging, that's why you see shootings occur. Because you don't need to be having your less lethal out without someone there providing lethal cover. But anyway, they're obviously doing it right. They got lethal cover protecting the person with the one-shot tube here.
Right here. Hey!
So you can hear the can get hit. And I'll back it up.
Right here, right here. Hey.
So I'll ask you to divert your attention to the left screen, and you'll see the dent in the can after he shoots.
Right here, right here. Hey.
It's going to be on the side of it.
Right here, right here. Hey.
So you can see the dent right there in that can, or that 40 millimeter projectile hit. All right, go back to the right screen over here. Let's start paying attention with this.
Hey, drop it. Hey.
So the single launch tube can't reload it fast enough. So the officer ditches that thing, drops it to the ground, and goes to his lethal weapon. This officer here to the right deploys taser. So they had a backup to the less lethal. That's good.
Hey! Hey, drop it! Hey! Drop it!
Taser's deployed, but it does not have the desired effect. They do not achieve NMI, or neuromuscular incapacitation. If there had been a good taser deployment on this guy, good probe placement, he wouldn't have been moving around like this. He would have dropped down to the ground. So I believe that one probe missed, or one probe has hit the clothing but has not gone into the skin and is making contact. I think it's more likely that one probe is missing, or one probe has missed and is not in him, just one. And that one probe is causing pain for him. That's why you see him thrashing around, because if you've never been exposed to taser before, then you have no idea how much it hurts. And that's why we see him thrashing around like that. I think it's just one probe's in him. If there's two in him, then they're just too close together. Normally, when that happens, when you have two probes too close together, you remedy the problem by doing a follow-up drive stun. But in this case, that's not a viable option, because he still has knives and he's thrashing around, and there's no way the taser officer is going to be able to safely approach, get any closer, and drive the gun into another point in his body and complete the circuit. Just no way that's going to happen. But typically, if you're on the ground or something and wrestling with someone, and you pull the taser out and you fire close proximity to them, both probes are going to be right next to each other, pretty much inside that person. So you just take the gun, say you shoot them into their back, you just take the gun and then drive it into their leg. So you got the two probes in the back, and then you got the end of the gun that has the metal contacts on it, and you drive it into the leg or lower part of the body, and then that completes the circuit. So the electricity is running from the probes and then down back to the gun and affecting all the muscle mass there.
Hey, stop! That's it.
You can hear the taser in the background. It's a tee kind of noise.
Hey! Hey! Hey, drop it! Hey! Drop it! Hey, stop! That's it.
And once he falls, you see his arms kind of go up here to the front. That's kind of a peculiar movement that looks like NMI has been achieved, because usually whenever someone's been hit and with the taser and you get NMI, the muscles lock up really good. You get that similar looking posture. The arms can just kind of be locked up in front of them, like a person does when they're being electrocuted, or a person in a fire does. Those arms just kind of come up forward. kind of motion.
That's it.
So that makes me wonder if, because he was initially within this area when the taser got fired the first time.
Hey, drop it! Hey! Drop it!
He was near this right here.
Hey, stop! Stop!
Or, well, let me go back. So if he was initially shot at with a taser right here, that makes me wonder if he has one probe in him and he comes and he falls back down. He's landed on the probe that missed, and now that's completing the circuit, and that's why we're seeing his arms do the cliche taser pose. Or the officer with the taser has an X2, and when the shooting was happening, he fired another cartridge bay into the guy, and then that had the desired effect. Or it could just be he just landed like that and was reeling from the pain of being shot with bullets. I don't know.
That's it. Drop the knife!
We'll go back and then we'll watch the left screen now.
40 millimeters. Give me a 40
40
millimeter.
over here, let's go! Shield! Shield, over here!
Hey, get down, dude.
Let's go, come on!
Get down. Get down.
Move up, Shield, move up!
Get down.
Hey, he's moving! Right here!
Hey.
Hey, drop it! Hey!
So he starts charging towards the officers. The 40 millimeter was ineffective.
Drop it!
Tasers deployed. Now, after tasers deployed, he's still standing and he's coming towards this officer with his knives. At this point, I believe this officer should have fired. Go back to the right screen here. Look at the distance here. Very short distance. And this guy's standing right in front of him, coming towards him in this instance right now. I believe that officer should have used deadly physical force against this guy. Too much of a risk in delaying and hoping that, he's not going to do something. Just way too much risk in my opinion. He's lucky. This deputy is super lucky. This guy did not come towards him with a knife and attack him with it. Very, very lucky, because he would have been able to clear that distance super fast, get on top of him and start slashing and stabbing, even if he would have fired a round off into him. Or 2 rounds, 3 rounds. Because pistol ammunition sucks. And as we see, he gets shot multiple times and he still lives. So that brings up another topic that I'll get into, long guns, but I'll save that after talking more about what's going on here. So he should have used deadly physical force in this instance, but he chose not to.
Hey, stop! Drop it! Hey, stop! Drop it! Hey, stop! Drop it! Hey, stop! Hey, stop! Hey, stop! Hey, stop! That's it.
So his shooting was more of a reactionary shooting. It wasn't until other people fired that he decided to fire. Again, like I said, I think he should have fired a lot sooner.
Right here! Hey! Hey, drop it! Hey!
Probably here. Could have also been an appropriate time to use deadly physical force. He's charging towards these other officers.
Drop it!
But for sure, right here when he's coming at him. But anyway, going into rifles and shotguns. So they all have pistols. And obviously that's why this guy ended up living, in my opinion, is they were using pistols against him. And pistols are pretty weak in comparison to long guns. So although pistol ammunition can kill, and it does kill, it doesn't do as effective of a job at incapacitating as rifle or shotgun does. There is a famous case out of Miami, Florida from the 80s, FBI versus a couple of bank robbers, and these dudes took multiple gunshot wounds and still lived during this gunfight. FBI went to go make a traffic stop, and gunfight started. The driver of the suspect vehicle initially took a round to the head, and it temporarily knocked him out for the incident. His buddy started to crawl out of the window, and he took a round to the left of his chest area. That round went into his heart area. It was a lethal enough of a hit that it was for sure going to kill him. It just did not immediately kill him or incapacitate. So when I say kill, I should realistically be using the terminology incapacitate, but I just kind of use the two interchangeably. So when I say kill, I'm not meaning from the context of, how do I word it? When I use the word kill, it just, I'm using it as also incapacitate. Anyway, he took a round to the side, and it went into his heart area, and it did not immediately incapacitate him. He was able to crawl completely out of the vehicle, still engaged in this gunfight with these multiple FBI agents, took some more hits to his body, and he went on to be able to kill 2 FBI agents and seriously wound a couple others. His buddy, who got shot in the head at the beginning of the gunfight, woke up during the middle of this fight, crawled out of the car, or got out of the car, and then went back to one of the FBI cars, got in it, and was going to take off in that car. Of course, his buddy got in at the same time, and then Ed Morales came up and dumped his wheel gun into them. And even after dumping his wheel gun into them, they were still alive at this point. They were incapacitated, and but they were still very much alive, and there were no drugs in their body whatsoever, none. But yet, after being shot multiple times, being shot in the head, still able to be in the fight. So when officers are going to calls that involve gunplay, that's why I always gripe in my videos about officers getting out with pistols. No, you do not want to go to a gunfight with a pistol. If you know you're going to a gunfight, you bring a rifle, and you bring your friends with rifles. This mindset, I believe, should also transfer to other incidents involving weapons, like knives. If you're going to be involved in something where if you're going to a call where it's known that a person has a deadly physical weapon and or deadly instrument, the long guns need to come out. No questions asked. Because those are better at incapacitating people than pistols are. There are a lot more people who can get up and walk away after being hit with a pistol than there are people with rifle. There's been people who've been able to take multiple pistol rounds and still continue to fight. not that many people at all who've been shot multiple times with a rifle and been able to keep fighting. The rifles and shotguns, they stop people, and they do a good job at stopping people. Now, am I saying that every single person who's ever been shot with a rifle was immediately incapacitated? No. There's been some people who've been able to continue to fight after being hit with a rifle, only because they were hit in a way that it was nowhere near a vital area. But generally speaking, those hit with rifles and shotguns, they don't last long in a fight. They go down pretty quick. Those hit with pistols, they can still get up and start fighting again, or continue to fight. Anyway, of course, the paramedics, I believe, were there to start rendering aid to this guy. We don't see any medical aid being rendered to this guy or anything like that. So I'm going to forego the spiel on medical talk. Not much else to say about this video. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.